welcome to How to Run ServiceTitan and QuickBooks Like a Pro, presented by one of our favorite ServiceTitan trainers, Ms. Kathy Nielsen from Operations Excellence LLC, aka the Chicken Lady Speaks. Let's do a quick Zoom tutorial for any of you guys who don't know at this point. First and foremost, Terry, glad you can hear me now. If everyone else can hear me, please go ahead and raise your hand. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Sissy, Jay, Karen, Alex, Lorraine, Lori, Mary, Phil, Michael, Shayla, Monica, Wayne. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of today to join us for today's wonderful webinar. If for whatever reason you cannot hear me, I encourage you to check out your audio settings and make sure the output of your Zoom is actually going to the device that you're tuning in on and not your neighbor's Bluetooth speaker, which very funny happened to me yesterday. So definitely encourage that you guys do that. Another thing I want to encourage you guys to use is the chat button right over here where you can chat with your fellow attendees, including your panelists, which are me and Kathy. Go ahead and provide commentary on what's going on, maybe share QuickBooks tips with other people who are in the webinar. The next part is we've dedicated, as always, time to answer your questions live. So if you have a question for Kathy, I highly recommend that you put it in the Q&A section right over here. We've also given you the ability to upvote the questions you want answered most. So even if you don't have a question, go ahead and check out that Q&A box and just give a little thumbs up to the question that you want answered the most. Cool. All right, so let's get into it. What are you guys going to learn today? So I understand that QuickBooks and ServiceTitan, this is a giant topic that we could spend a whole day on. But for this hour-long webinar, here are the things that we are going to cover. First of all, actually, before I even go to this, I want to find out how many people here are ServiceTitan customers and how many are not, because we did open this webinar to people who don't yet have ServiceTitan. So go ahead and answer this poll and let us know where you're at. This will help me and Kathy kind of frame the conversation. So while that's going, let me go through the takeaways that you are going to get from today's wonderful webinar. First, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of having a self-taught bookkeeper in your office and how to mitigate any risk. We know that a lot of service businesses, they kind of start from the ground up, and accounting can be done by a friend, a girlfriend, a wife, a husband, a boyfriend. So Kathy's kind of talk about, what that means for your business and how you can put processes in place to make sure that everything is copacetic. The next thing we're going to talk about is the types of trends that owners should look for in their books. So, and what kind of business decisions you should make based off those trends. We're also going to be talking about the difference between QuickBooks and ServiceTitan, who should have access to which, and who should be able to make adjustments and how they should work together. And probably most importantly, we're going to be talking about the common pitfalls about how to reduce manual entries and properly track AR, liabilities, and payables. So just to be crystal clear, we will be showing screenshots of ServiceTitan and QuickBooks, but we're going to talk about how the two platforms work together, kind of from, I'm not going to say a bird's eye view because we're going a little bit more in depth there, but I just want to make it abundantly clear that we're not showing you how to set up an integration. We're just kind of talking about how the integration works and how you can set up the two softwares to communicate and work successfully. All right. So thank you guys for answering that poll. Kathy, for your reference, we, as I expected, have mostly ServiceTitan customers on today's call, but we also have some people who are not customers. So first off, who is Kathy? I think a lot of you guys know, but for anyone who doesn't, I'm going to kind of explain why she's talking about this. And while I do, go ahead and let us know what industry you're in. Again, this just helps us, flavor the webinar so we can speak to the needs that you guys have. So Kathy is the owner of Operations Excellence LLC, aka the Chicken Lady Speaks. She is a dedicated trainer. She has trained, I have no idea, probably hundreds of ServiceTitan customers at this point on how to best use our software and how to make the software work for their business. Back in December, she did a fantastic webinar with us on how to build a more profitable price book that I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested. She has over 20 years of industry experience. She hosts boot camps, leadership training, and QuickBooks training all over the country. Before we went live with this webinar, she was just saying that she zipped all around from New Orleans to Oklahoma in just the last week. So Kathy has seen a lot of different setups of service businesses, and she has a lot of knowledge to share with you guys. So that is the end for me. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite Kathy to come on screen and share her slides. Hey, Kathy.
Good morning. Well, it's still morning for me. It might not be morning for everybody, but
I definitely, maybe lunchtime for some of our East Coast people.
Exactly. So I am going to screen share here, and hopefully I pick the right screen. There. So can you see, you're seeing my PowerPoint main slide, correct?
I'll leave it up to you. Let me know if you need anything, okay?
Awesome. So I know Jackie told you a little bit about me, and so we're going to talk about some tips and tricks and must-do with regards to QuickBooks. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this on my own and traveling to companies for about 3 years now. And prior to that, ran companies. I've sat in all those seats: CSR, bookkeeper, office manager, as a GM of a large heating and cooling company. So I've been through it. There's not much I haven't been, and I also am a vendor partner with ServiceTitan and their ASP program. So I traveled so far this year. COVID has really kind of ruined my travel opportunities the past few months, but already I've been to 11 companies this year and helped a lot of them remotely. And all of them we work with their QuickBooks or desktop or online. I do both. They both function similar but different. And whether you're on ServiceTitan software or not, most any software people are using QuickBooks. So some of these things we're going to talk about pertain even if you're not on ServiceTitan. And I'm going to talk about the things I see often in the industry, and maybe some things to be aware of and that you should be doing. So I get asked all the time, QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop? And there are pros and cons to both of them. They do behave differently. So QuickBooks Online, entries such as refunds are done very differently in online versus desktop. Online does not currently do inventory. So if you are wanting to do that in the near future, that's definitely something to consider. Some people think, well, I'll be on this for now, and then when we get to that, we'll switch. Absolutely, you can do that, but sometimes you have to relearn then because they behave differently. Online is accessible from anywhere, and I use online for my personal business. I love the receipt snap. It's fabulous. However, you're not going to have all your people in your QuickBooks, so receipt snap in that instance is only good for, basically the owner or possibly a bookkeeper or accountant. So, but it's a great feature, but not universally accessible. And desktop, the other thing, it has much better permissions to dial in. Online is growing that, but right now you can't really dial in permissions very well. So if somebody has login, they have access to everything, where desktop, I can really curb what anybody gets in. So Jackie alluded to it. Many people in this business have bookkeepers that are self-taught. Many of them are family members, like she said, wives, girlfriends, moms, brothers, whomever. And so the one thing I really talk to them about a lot is just owning your limitations. If you don't know, don't just throw something in there, right? Financials are critical data. And so if you don't know, find out. I really encourage to have a quarterly CPA review that. And there are tax accountants and there are, CPA accountants. So one's looking to show you profitable and one's looking to not show you profitable, right? So we save taxes. So those are different types of accountants, but whomever you use, just have them review what you do. If they give you adjustments to make, why do you need to make the adjustments? I'm not saying question what they're telling you, but you want to make sure you change what's happening so you don't have to keep doing that all the time. The other thing is, many of the owners in this industry, in service industries, were really great techs and decided to have a business, which awesome. I'm all for that, right? But the other thing is, many times they don't read financials well, or they don't have that business background, and that's absolutely okay. But learn to watch for trends in your business. So if you can't pick up a financial from any company and tell them all about that company, you can at least learn to look at trends in your own. So trends like labor costs and material costs, and how much you're having to give away, and those overhead things. Just look for percentage trends. If you see marketing dollars that generally at a 8%, and all of a sudden they're 15%, you're watching that. Or same with labor. If it's typically at a certain percentage and it jumps up drastically. And then the other thing is, don't have whoever's doing your books do everything. So for example, when I was a bookkeeper, I cut the checks. So I did not give myself the ability, or let the owners give me the ability, to sign checks. Someone else signs them if I'm cutting them. When I was a GM, I'm the one signing checks. So my bookkeeper cut the checks, but she didn't have the ability to sign. So make sure whoever's doing it does not cut the checks, sign the checks, and do the reconciliation. You can get into trouble very quickly. And I've got a good friend right now that, was on the verge of losing her business and her personal things because of situations that checks and balance. I say this all the time. People give the keys to the farm. We are very trusting business owners, and I've seen so many times that we give them all the power. And in 1 year, I was at 6 shops that I found people stealing from the business. And I wasn't even looking for it, but when you're in books all the time, you see some inherent things that are weird. And so we put those things in place to keep people honest. It's not to say they are thieves, but we never know what goes on in people's personal lives, and they may make a decision that's a really poor decision that they normally would never make. So make sure you're curbing those permissions, both in ServiceTitan and in QuickBooks. ServiceTitan is your data for your customers. It is what you use to collect. QuickBooks is financials. So there are very few people that need to be in your QuickBooks at any given time. The people that need in it are owners, bookkeepers, your CPA. If you're not exporting POs from ServiceTitan to QuickBooks as either a PO or a payable, and you have to enter payables, someone may be doing that for you that isn't the bookkeeper. And in that case, again, you want to really limit their access and what they can see. The other thing that I find people don't understand, and a lot of it's because of the verbiage is different and it means the same thing. So in ServiceTitan, a business unit is what in QuickBooks is called a class. It's what you and I would call a department. So the business unit allows for mapping of your numbers in ServiceTitan, and you can have multiple business units hit one class in QuickBooks. The class in QuickBooks allows you to run your P&L and balance sheets by class, or like I tell people, by department. And many companies create a business unit called sales. That is for mapping. Sales will not carry revenue. It is just to track the sales of people, especially pure salespeople. So the gray area on your dashboard is where your numbers live. And this data happens when a job completes or an estimate sells that has data to match this information. And so many times I have people that their mapping's a little off because they've maybe added business units and things and didn't realize they have to remap it. So a lot of people don't trust their dashboard data. But if your mapping's accurate and you're doing things accurately from the booking of a job, your data will be accurate. So the revenue sections are the service, the maintenance, and the install sections. Those carry revenue. Those sections, that revenue is what should match QuickBooks. It hits here when a job completes that carries revenue. If you use Done For Now, which I'm not a fan, and any of you that have ever talked to me know it, I'm not a fan, but it will never hit that revenue. It also will never hit on the invoice screen to be batched and posted and exported to QuickBooks. Install revenue shows on the installer, not on the salesperson. The salesperson's numbers show in sale. You want the revenue to show when the labor happens. I see a lot of people changing splits to put revenue back on the salesperson, and that's technically not correct because, again, you want your revenue to hit in QuickBooks where that labor happened. The one thing that I always do in any company, the first thing I look at is I go into search and I look for scheduled jobs prior to yesterday, because there's no such thing. Done For Now is a big culprit of this. And also many times I find that there's revenue sitting there too. And it doesn't matter whatever excuse you come up with of why that happens. None of them are really valid because a job shouldn't be scheduled prior to today. The quickest way to find all of those is on search. Sales will not carry revenue. So if you have a sales class in QuickBooks, it shouldn't have revenue. On your dashboard, that is sales. It happens when an estimate is sold and converted. So if you aren't using estimates, which I find a lot of companies aren't, you're not able to track that sales correctly. Your sales number in any given time frame you run should match that sales section. And very often I'm not seeing that, and it's because of mapping. When a salesman goes out on a call, that is generally a $0 invoice. I don't have an opinion whether $0 invoices should or shouldn't go to QuickBooks. I personally don't care if they hit QuickBooks, so I don't worry about managing them. I believe there is a config that can cause them not to hit without manually doing it. So I personally just don't worry about those. I just don't get wrapped up in managing $0 invoices. The other thing is, and a lot of people don't know this because of the default setting, is invoices and payments are separate transaction. Your payment you collect, so if you collected credit card payments today, they will hit your checking account regardless of what you do in ServiceTitan. So I always change that setting on batching settings so invoices and payments are separate. And I advocate that your bookkeeper is the one that batches and posts and exports payments. You usually have someone else doing invoices that is involved in that all day long. My CSRs batch my invoices because they're looking at them all the time and they have specific things they're looking for. But I want my bookkeeper to do the payments. Now, some people choose to have their batches match their deposit. I don't worry about that because it doesn't cause a deposit in QuickBooks. It causes it to hit undeposited funds, and you create the deposit to match your actually what hit the bank. So I don't really advocate that they need to match. I also have some companies that like their batches to match what their technicians hand them. Again, I'm not a freak about that because if like if you're using check capture, it's going to hit your bank whether that tech handed you to you or not. And if I wait until he hands it to me, then my books aren't up to date. So I manage my deposits in QuickBooks. That's where I double check I got what I needed to get and all of those things.
Hey, Kathy, there's a little bit of feedback when you talk. It's not horrible, but there's a little bit of it sounds like someone's almost typing. Would you try unmuting yourself and then, would you try muting yourself and then unmuting yourself and see if that solves the issue?
Sure. Otherwise, I can throw on my headsets too if that's a problem.
It helps. Does it just plug into the computer? Okay, why don't you try that? Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone, for the technical difficulties. I see it coming through on Facebook and on chat, so I want to see if we can try and mitigate because she's given some serious knowledge, and I don't want you guys to miss it. And just a quick reminder, we have a lot of questions coming down in the chat. We already have 10, so go ahead and upvote the questions that you want answered most, and be sure to submit questions as they come to you. The more context you provide in your first question, the easier it'll be for us to answer it.
All right, tell me how that is.
That actually sounds a lot better. All right, so let's keep going. Everyone in the chat and on Facebook, let me know how things are happening, and we'll do our best to mitigate.
Yes, thank you for telling me that because I don't know unless you say so. On my end, I sound amazing. So invoice and payments, I believe, are separate. The other thing I comment to people is you can you can create 500 batches a day and call it mashed potatoes. ServiceTitan doesn't care. So that's why I just don't make it crazy about invoice and payments being together. The other thing is you may have a question on an invoice or something that needs taken care of, but again, that payment's already going to hit our bank account. I can't wait on that. Oh, bear with me. I got to get back to where there. I can switch screens. So make sure your QuickBooks and ServiceTitan is linked. And for some of you, that sounds really basic, but you would be amazed at how many shops I go to that don't have it linked. And what happens is, and if you're not using ServiceTitan, that's okay. Just if your other software hooks up to it, I would encourage that. If it doesn't, you're just making those entries in QuickBooks. The thing you have to decide is when you're making those entries in QuickBooks, are you just going to make a big entry or are you going to do individual entries? So are you just going to do daily revenue versus individual invoices? When your ServiceTitan and QuickBook isn't linked, it's the same thing. You are either entering every single invoice to a customer, every single payable, or you're entering just a total gross revenue number. And I see them do it not very often, but if you're doing that, I would say daily minimum, but get them linked. It's a lot of extra work. Manual entries are an opportunity for error, and anything we can do that is not a manual entry or opportunity for error, we want to do that. The other thing is when people don't have them linked, I see them doing it based on what they pull in from their bank statement. Well, in theory, it makes sense, but the reality is what happens to all the things that don't hit your bank? What happens to the things like people that didn't pay you or discounts or coupons or things like that? You have no way to track that if all you're pulling in is from your bank statement. I also see all the time people don't batch, post, and export invoices that people owe them money on. And that's a big no-no. That invoice screen in ServiceTitan should be clean. I do a 24-hour. Within 24 hours, that invoice needs to be batch posted and exported. The reason being is if you leave your AR sit there, it never hits revenue in QuickBooks. So now your financials are off. Now, if you do quarterly taxes, it's off. The other thing, if you go to a bank and are looking for a line of credit or things like that, or you're trying to sell your business, open AR, as long as it's not too old, is an asset. And if it's never there, it's not an asset. And so it gets really messy really quick. Also, it's not posted. It doesn't show on your AR report in QuickBooks. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So Open AR in QuickBooks and ServiceTitan should match to the penny at any given moment. I should be able to go into your QuickBooks and run your aging summary and go into your ServiceTitan and run the proper report, and it should identically match. Now, most of you right now are going, oh no, ours won't match. That's really common. I'm a freak about it. So when I was the bookkeeper, I ran mine once a week and it matched the penny all the time. It's really important. The beauty of accounting is it's pretty black and white, right? Things have to balance and match, and that's a beautiful thing. So also, if a payment is applied to the wrong invoice in QuickBooks, it's really quick to change where it's applied. ServiceTitan, not so easy, not so great. So I'm going to show you a little trick to move the payment. So you can move it in ServiceTitan to match where you move it to in QuickBooks. So the accounts receivable report that I like to use to compare to QuickBooks is in a legacy report. If you go to reports, legacy, and accounts receivable, it's the third one down. I really like this report better than the new AR aging report. It's an opinion, but I can really see it a lot easier, and I can work the report easier, in my opinion. So I would typically run this at least once a week to compare it. But what you do is you go to that report in legacy accounts receivable. You're going to choose the status as exported. That is critical because the only thing QuickBooks knows is exported. Then I always choose include pinned customer notes. I checkbox that box. The reason being is this is my collection report. So anybody that's doing collections for me in the office does not have to get in my QuickBooks, but those notes are things like customer notes are my bill to notes. So those are comments like, Kathy said she's sending a check next Friday, the 12th. When you pin it on the customer, it shows on this report so you can easily work your collections. And then the balance, this is what should exactly match your aging summary. And the aging summary lives in QuickBooks under reports. It's not a detail about all the invoices. I generally don't run that unless I'm doing something else, just because it's too much data to dig into. So that balance and the aging summary report balance should exactly match as long as you make these choices. If the invoice is not posted, batched, and exported, it will not show in this report. If you chose a different status, it would, but then it doesn't help us because we're comparing it to QuickBooks. This is where the AR management report and statements got moved to. So some of us were used to the little road icon in ServiceTitan and it disappeared one day. This is where it went. So it's on your invoice tab. It's under AR management. I'm just not as big a fan as a report to do my collections. Again, it's how my brain works. It's how I'm wired, and I like the other one better. But this is very similar. Some of the other AR reports, you have to be careful because they're date driven. And I've had companies trying to see why things didn't match, but they did a date range and the payment fell outside of that date range compared to the invoice. So it's not showing you the big picture of AR. The little black page icon is for notes, and the 3 dots on the right is where your statement moved to. That's the old road icon. Now is these 3 dots here. And you can do multiple bulk statements in this screen. So moving a payment in QuickBooks is super easy. It's not so easy in ServiceTitan. So here's what I do. I set up a payment type. I call it AR fix. There are some new defaults that you got one when you started out and it was called applied AR. Either one's fine. I just make sure that it is exports as a payment, the attributes are none, and I hide it from mobile. I don't want my text to ever accidentally use it. But having no attributes, it will never accidentally export to QuickBooks. It will throw an error on your pending export report, so you can just bypass it. And then what you do is you will do that negative or positive payment entry on an invoice. So if I have an invoice that has a negative balance because a payment got applied to the wrong one, I'll apply a negative payment to that invoice and then a positive payment to the one it should be. In my memo, I just say applied to invoice, XYZ, and then bypass, and now it zeroes that out. In QuickBooks, you can just move it. The other thing you'll want to do in QuickBooks, there's a report called an open invoice report. I also make sure this is clean all the time. It doesn't affect financials, but it's just keeping it clean and making sure things are applied. So many times when you run that report, you'll see customers with a zero balance. But what it is oftentimes is a credit memo or a payment or a GL entry that didn't get applied to the invoice. So in that report, you can just click in that amount, say apply it to open invoices, and it will go off of that report. They still have a zero balance. It just takes it off that report because it's not an open invoice anymore. We apply that payment or credit memo or entry. Job costing is in ServiceTitan, not in QuickBooks. Now, there is a caveat with that. There are some of you that do large commercial projects. I get that. It isn't amazing yet. ServiceTitan is working on that. But in general, it works well. QuickBooks is your higher level profitability look by department, not by individual job. So ServiceTitan is your individual job look. Now, keep in mind, in ServiceTitan, a job is a visit and a project is a scope of work. So each job carries an invoice and that has job costing. You see on the screen on the left, there's a little job costing button on your invoice screen. You click that and see job costing. In a project screen, which I've shown on the right there, it lives towards the bottom. A lot of people don't even realize it's there. And that is job costing for the entire project. So if it's a 4-day job, plus you had a salesman go out there, plus maybe a service tech started the call, you have 6 jobs in this scope of work. And that's where that lives. That job costing screen will show your POs and all that. In QuickBooks, to do job costing, you have to, in each receivable and each payable, you have to put the job on each line item. So this keeps you from having to do that. It's granular, but again, if you're doing large commercial jobs, it's not granular enough yet, generally, for most people. So they're still doing that job costing in QuickBooks. Revenue, discounts, coupons, and rebates. All of this feeds from your price book settings. So when techs are giving price discounts or waiving something or giving a coupon, you want to make sure they're showing that service on and then the discount or coupon back off. You don't want to just zero out a price, because then financially I can't track any of that. I can't track how often we're giving things away. In your price book, there's a general ledger account line. So on a service, this is generally an income account. That's just your revenue account. You don't have to, and I say have to because you don't have to say, for example, HVAC income or plumbing income. If you just say income, the business unit, which is a class, which is a department, feeds QuickBooks which one that goes to. So it's globally revenue or income, but departmentally is driven by the job. That way you can have one service across multiple business units. Now, if you have particular services or materials that you want driven to a certain class income or class cost of goods, then you would put that in there. But you don't have to in order for it to feed. The other thing is coupons and discounts, and this is an opinion again, but coupons to me are a marketing deal. Discounts to me are what I have to give to somebody either to make them happy or to get the sale. I like them as two separate GL entry or GL accounts. And so I have them as separate. I don't have coupons and discounts all feed to the same GL account. I want to be able, when I run my financials, to see how much I had to give away this year to make people happy. Or is it because my price is too high, or what's happening? Coupons, again, is a marketing thing. I want to know, are people using these? Do they get used? And what is that financial impact of that? Refund payments, I see a lot of people in QuickBooks just doing a lot of manipulating because their refunds are messy. So the easiest way to do that is to create a refund payment, a type for each different one. So I have a refund credit card that exports as a journal entry. It hits undeposited funds because a credit card refund is part of my credit card deposit, but I can't have it export as a credit card because it's a negative payment. So I do this and then it will hit correctly to add into my deposit. Again, hide it from mobile. Don't let your techs accidentally use it. For check, I create a payment type with no attributes, hide from mobile, so it will throw an error and never accidentally export. I can bypass QuickBooks. The reason being is in QuickBooks Desktop, for example, I can go to a customer with a credit balance. I can click on a button that says use credit to send a check, and boom, it's done. Otherwise, I'm having to set them up as a vendor and do a whole bunch of manipulation, and they're not vendors, so we don't want to do that. In QuickBooks Online, it's a refund receipt. Again, you're not setting up anybody as a vendor, but this allows you to tell ServiceTitan that you did that. Reconcile daily. And here's why I advocate that. I can reconcile every morning. It takes me about 2 minutes. And then at the end of the month, it takes me about 10. If I do it once a month, my financial dashboard in QuickBooks is accurate for about an hour once a month. A lot of people don't even know you can do this. So what I do, my process is every morning, you go to your bank, you see what the ending balance was prior to pending. You go into QuickBooks, banking, reconcile, you put in that number, you click off the things that cleared. In QuickBooks Desktop, there is a button at the bottom that says leave. That saves what you just did. In QuickBooks Online, there's a save for later button in the upper right-hand corner. And then you just keep doing that. That way now, anytime the owner or anybody reading financials goes into QuickBooks, it's accurate. Your credit cards are the same way. I do my credit cards every day. So I don't have to spend hours and hours on the credit card at the end of the month. A credit card in QuickBooks is a bank account. There are new recommendations on how to do rebates, which a lot of people call buy downs in ServiceTitan. In the past, it was a payment type that fed finance fees, but they found that some of your reporting doesn't really work correctly. So you want to run it through a liability account in QuickBooks. And that liability account in theory really should net to zero. The cool thing is you do these adjustments, which honestly is a little bit messy, but you do the adjustment invoices. When you look at a project invoice and email it to a customer, all those rebate adjustments and things don't go to them, but if you print it, you see them all. So if you want to know that new workflow for rebates or buy downs, just talk to your CSM. They can give you that knowledge base link, or else Jackie can, get that to everybody at the end of the thing later. I didn't preempt her for that, so I'm sure she's not prepared for that link right now. If you are doing GL entries, just figure out why. Whether you're in ServiceTitan software or another software, if you're doing a bunch of GL entries, figure it out why, because it's usually because something wasn't entered correctly to begin with. If you're using ServiceTitan, it's because you don't have things set up to feed how you want them to feed. The other thing is, don't let people who don't understand accounting do adjustment invoices. An example is, I was at one shop and they had someone writing off bad debt, and she was dating the adjustment invoice for the date the debt happened. Well, some of those were 3 years old. I can promise they've already done financials and paid taxes and closed those out. So now that person who didn't understand the impact of their choices is affecting things from 3 years ago. The other thing is, people, if let's say I perform a service for a customer and it's an HVAC service, and they call a week later and they're really unhappy with the price, and I need to give them a $100 refund. If someone doesn't understand accounting, they'll use that HVAC service task and do a negative $100. But what happens is, now I'm hitting revenue negative $100. It's not hitting discount. So again, financially, I can't see how much I had to give away. So either you need to help them understand their choices, or you need to have somebody do those things that understands accounting. Another quick tip in ServiceTitan, a lot of people don't know, in QuickBooks, you can close out a month. So my financials had to be to me within 5 business days at the end of the month. And when that was given to me, she closed that so nobody could post into it. Well, ServiceTitan has that. It lives on your business unit. It's called minimum post date. So whatever you have in there, anything prior cannot be posted. So if I put June 1 here, nothing prior to June 1 can get posted in ServiceTitan, which if it can't get posted, it can't get exported. It's kind of a cool little feature. Nobody knows it's there. So I know we were leaving time for questions, and so I vomited a lot of information really quickly. So hopefully we have some good questions. I'm going to let Jackie take back over, and hopefully we can answer some of those.
We most definitely can. We have quite a lot. I am going to go back to sharing my screen, and we'll do a couple more polls for everyone. We have quite a few polls. So first and foremost, thank you, Kathy. We have everyone chiming in through Facebook, chiming through the chat. I think we have almost 30 questions already. People love your knowledge, so thank you for taking the time this morning to chat with everyone. I have 2 polls hitting people right now, because remember, we have both non-ServiceTitan customers and ServiceTitan customers on today's webinar. So if you are not a ServiceTitan customer and you want to learn more about ServiceTitan, go ahead and respond to this poll right now. You can also go to servicetitan.com/Kathy. And thank you. I did put an option here in the poll to say I am already a customer, because when I go through this data, sometimes I notice that customers are super overzealous, and I'll be like, wait, they want a ServiceTitan demo, but you're already on ServiceTitan. So I'll just let that run for a couple more minutes. And then, because I know we have a lot of customers here that want to hear from Kathy directly, I'm going to run a poll right after this that's going to ask if you want to be put in contact with her. She does trainings, like she said, with ServiceTitan customers all across the country, and she has more knowledge than, she definitely has more knowledge than me on the ServiceTitan platform, but I won't say anything else about my colleagues, but you're definitely an asset, and the entire ServiceTitan community loves to have you. So I'll get that going right now. And while we're running these polls, I want everyone to please take a look at, okay, this is for ServiceTitan customers if you'd like to be put in contact with Kathy. So while you guys are answering that poll, please go ahead and go to the Q&A section. We have 43 questions now, and upvote the ones that you want answered most. We do have time for Q&A, but we want to be mindful of Kathy's time. Okay, well, I'll keep that one going. And how about we dive into the first question. Does that sound good, Kathy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Now this question has quite a lot of chatter. Big props to Renee Brown for chatting in with her solution on this. But Kathy, I wonder if you can offer some color to this. Bethany asks, how can I set up ServiceTitan and QuickBooks integration to automatically add sales tax to the line item where it should be, i.e. make sales tax payable, not an additional line item?
Because what I think you're saying is when you have sales tax in ServiceTitan, it makes a line item in QuickBooks instead of falling into that sales tax field. And to my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, right now, that's how it works. It's not able to change that. Because it's a field from ServiceTitan, the link goes to there. Now, that's not to say it won't be different in the future, but right now I believe that it has to be a separate line item.
So this is why getting on webinars with brilliant customers is so important. Renee Brown actually commented that her CSM added a new configuration that allows for QuickBooks to calculate the sales tax based on the taxable sale. And she said that with this new configuration, she started it May 1st and it works great. So Renee,
Awesome.
is still online. If you could please put that information in the chat, I would love to share it with the rest of our community. If not, to Bethany, I will do my own digging internally at ServiceTitan and learn a little bit more about that configuration and get that info for you. So that was our top rated question with 11 upvotes. The next one is from Alex, and he asks, we had a few customers with deposits for future work on their accounts when we became ServiceTitan customers. ServiceTitan brought those deposit balances over within a new ServiceTitan invoice, which won't allow us to then apply that existing credit to a now booked completed ServiceTitan invoice. How do we best resolve these issues both on the QB side and the ServiceTitan side?
So on ServiceTitan, you'll have to do that like AR Fix or Applied AR that I showed you to move the payment. In QuickBooks, generally speaking, what happens is because they're on a different customer in QuickBooks, you can go to that payment and change the customer either on the payment or the invoice, whichever is appropriate in this instance, to the correct customer now all that lives under. Or merge your customers so you can apply it. But that's why you generally can't apply a payment to an invoice in QuickBooks easily. It's because if you look, they actually are two different customers. You can't change a customer on a payment if it's part of a deposit. So you know, sometimes there's a little more manipulation than others unless you do want to do it as a GL entry. Again, I'm not a fan to do GL entries if you don't have to. So I try to avoid that, but my bet is that's what's happening. It's because ServiceTitan made a new customer in QuickBooks. So you've got to either merge those customers or you've got to change that customer on either the invoice or the payment.
Thanks, Kathy. Alex, I hope that answered your question. We're going to go to our next question in a moment. But before I do, I want you guys to rate the helpfulness of this webinar based on whether or not you like this, which I very much hope you do. We'll be able to do more like these in the future. So go ahead, vote honestly. I've allowed it to be anonymous. And if you have any feedback, you can always reach me. I'm putting my email in the chat right now, which is jackie@servicetitan.com. And I will be sharing my email with you in the follow-up email. So this next question, Kathy, comes from Christina. And she says, it is my understanding that you cannot record a refund in ServiceTitan if you're not using ServiceTitan payments. This leads me to have to do my refunds only in QuickBooks that are not reflected in my ServiceTitan. CSRs do not have QuickBook access and cannot see if someone received a refund for something. Is there something I'm missing?
So if you're using Titan payments and you use the little spinning arrow to create the refund, it should record that.
Yeah.
So I'd have to see what's going on to understand that one. I don't know that I can answer it without seeing it, but it should be recording it.
She says she does not use ServiceTitan payments. She confirmed in the chat.
Oh, okay. So if you're not using ServiceTitan payments, what you do is you're going to go to whatever merchant you use and do the refund. And then you go into ServiceTitan, you add the payment for that refund type. You know, I told you a payment type credit card refund. So you add that payment and it's a negative amount, and then that reflects that in ServiceTitan that it was done.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Kathy, Christina. I hope that cleared that up for you. And thank you also to Candace and Jennifer who commented on that question. Next up, we have Angie. And she says, can you please explain in detail the refund process in ServiceTitan? We have had issues with refunding credit cards and then an amount showing up as a credit available on the customer's account when they don't actually have credit.
I'm reading that again just so I can be really clear.
No, that's all good. You have access to the questions, right? You can see them.
Yeah. Okay, the reason that you're refunding a credit card and then that shows up as a credit on their account is because they didn't have a negative balance when you did the credit. So oftentimes what's happening is, let's say I giving them $100 refund, so I need to credit their credit card $100. I have to first do that adjustment invoice so they have a negative $100 balance beforehand. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, that's what's happening. You're either adding the refund payment, and so it's showing they have a negative balance because the credit memo didn't get done, or you did the credit memo and didn't record that you gave them that money back.
Gotcha. Hope that answers your question, Angie. We have another question coming up, but before that, I want to answer one from Facebook from Angelina, who's been tuning in throughout the whole Facebook Live. And she asks, how do I import POs as bills so I don't have to manually enter payables?
So that is a config in ServiceTitan. When you use purchase orders in ServiceTitan, they can be exported as a purchase order or as an invoice. Depending what you're doing and how deep you are in inventory, I'm a fan in general of them exporting as a payable. There is also a config that a lot of people don't know, and actually the config has to be turned off. But what it does is it allows you to edit the purchase order in ServiceTitan regardless of the status of the invoice. So then you can edit that purchase order. Like if you get a payable and the pricing's off a little bit, you can edit that pricing on the purchase order, then batch it, post it, and export it so your payable is correct.
Right. I hope that answered your question, Angelina. Next question is from Angie, and I don't have any insight into this. I doubt that you will, but I'll ask it because it is top rated. She asks, do you know if QuickBooks will be doing away with the desktop version in the future? And there's a lot of speculation that probably.
Get rid of the what version?
The desktop version in the future and just opt for QuickBooks Online entirely.
Obviously I don't work for QuickBooks, but I can't even imagine that happens because online will not handle inventory. And I don't think online is robust enough to do that. And I don't believe their intent for online was ever that. It's intended for small companies.
Gotcha. The next question came from Karen. This was a little bit earlier. I'm sorry we didn't answer it quicker, but she asked if she said she's a bookkeeper and she always has issues with importing to QuickBooks and whether or not this session would help her. I hope it did, Karen. Kathy, do you have any other words of wisdom to share with Karen who has issues importing to QuickBooks?
Most import issues, you want to always run that pending export report. It will tell you that. I run it before exporting and after, because if there's going to be an error, it will tell me. And if there was an error, it will tell me. There have been a lot of errors lately with all the changes in the update that happened and the web connectors and that. But if you're having an error, find out what the commonality is. There is also a sheet that tells you those error codes and what they mean. I believe it's in the knowledge base. I downloaded mine and save it, but you can look up what the error code means. Many, many times it has to do with your QuickBooks name in your business unit has to exactly match your class in QuickBooks. Your GL name has to exactly match what QuickBooks says. And a lot of times we'll put an extra space or have a capital letter and it should have been a small letter. Those cause errors. It's very critical. It's exact. So I would start there.
Right. Thank you. This next one's from Michael, and he asks, for exporting every day, what if you're waiting on PO costs?
That's why I turn off that config so that you can edit POs regardless of the status of the invoice. In the past, that config was on by default. They are now on people that go into inventory, that is off by default now, I believe. But I always make sure that's off because you are exporting invoices daily and you do need to edit POs when you get that payable.
Gotcha. This next, we only have a couple more minutes left, so I want to encourage everyone to go ahead and upload questions they want answered the most. Rihanna, you have the next question, but I believe it is about, it's more of a feedback comment for ServiceTitan, so I will be sharing that with my team. I'm going to go to Nayiri. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. They asked, you said to post and transfer invoices daily. What would you do with jobs that take multiple days or even months in some cases to finish?
So when you want to recognize the revenue, those are the jobs that carry revenue. So let's say, for example, I quote a $10,000 job and it's going to take 2 business days. I book that estimate for day 2. That's where my revenue happens. I want to recognize revenue on the last day. And then there's a new config, if you don't have it, ask to turn it on, called duplicate job. You click the blue drop down, click duplicate job, and that you'll book day 1. That day 1 is a $0 invoice, but it automatically makes it part of a project. So again, job is a visit and project is a scope of work. And so that's how it does that. So every day they're completing that job, you're posting it, you're batching it. That may be a $0 invoice if it's not a day that you want to carry revenue.
Gotcha. This next question comes from Elizabeth Mendez, and she asks, I would like to clean up the $0 invoices, but when I try to export to QuickBooks, I get error messages. What chart of accounts should those invoices hit in QuickBooks and ServiceTitan? I apologize if you already went over $0 invoices. Thank you.
Technically, it doesn't matter where you have them hit because it's $0. I would just have them to your general income account. However, you can just run your pending export report and click bypass and just bypass those because they don't affect financials. So it really doesn't matter unless they were going to affect financials.
Next question comes from Robin. I don't think you have the answer to this, but she asked it in the chat. I encouraged her to add it to Q&A and it got uploaded, so we're going to ask it. Robin said, this may not be the place, but Kathy seems to have a wealth of knowledge. So is there a way to do progress billing in ServiceTitan?
There is, and it's exactly like I just said about that 2-day example. So let's say I want to bill them a third, a third, a third. So I'll have those thirds will be in a project, right? So when I want to bill the third, I just make sure that invoice has revenue. And then when I want to build the second third and the third third, all of that also lives under the project invoice. It's a blue button on the project that says invoice. So the customer can see it as one if you want them to, or you can give them the individual one. Now, if you're doing, like I have one customer, they literally had a $1.2 million project that went on, oh gosh, I don't know, 8 months. Do you want to make a job every single day? No, that's not reasonable, but you can still use progressive billing in ServiceTitan by creating those invoices when you want to bill them progressively. So hopefully that made sense.
I think that did. We have a ServiceTitan designer named Daniel who actually wants to chat with you, Kathy. Daniel. What final question I'm going to take from Rosanna at Lumberjack HVAC, who I think maybe isn't a ServiceTitan customer yet. And she wants to know, how do you link ServiceTitan with QuickBooks? So could you talk about how they communicate?
Say that again. I can't see it on here, and I missed the first.
Oh, no worries. Rosanna from Lumberjack HVAC.
Oh, I see it here.
I don't think she's a ServiceTitan customer yet. And I think she wants more information on how the two systems work together.
Oh, gotcha. So the easiest way to explain it, for example, and if you're accounting bend, that's kind of scary. But for example, if I have an invoice to a customer, when it exports to QuickBooks, it hits receivables and revenue, or whatever, deferred revenue, depending what's going on. If I take a payment, it hits undeposited funds and receivables. If I have a purchase order that hits as a payable, it hits payables and cost of goods. So the linking, what it does is it makes that double entry for you very easily.
Great. Kathy, we still have 51 questions yet, but unfortunately we are out of time. Is there any closing statements that you would like to say to the still well over 300 people who have joined us today?
I am happy to answer questions as much as I can. I do on-sites. I do Zoom training meetings all the time. You're welcome to go to my website, chickenladyspeaks.com. There's a place where you can contact me there. I'm pretty known in the business. If you're curious how I work or what I do, just ask some of your peers. They've probably heard of me or has used me, but thank you for attending. That's awesome. There's that many questions. I'm happy to answer them as I can. If you shoot me an email, I'll do my best.
If you want, Kathy, I can send you all the unanswered questions, and you can figure it out from there. But to everyone, I will certainly share Kathy's information in a follow-up email that'll go out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. It'll include the recording as well as a copy of Kathy's slides. So yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. I'm so happy to hear that a lot of you found today's session helpful, and if you have any other suggestions, please send them my way. Want to make sure that you guys are as successful with ServiceTitan as possible. Kathy, thank you again so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
You bet.
Have a good one. Bye, everyone.